Blood was pooling around my head the first time my husband looked at me with absolute disgust. He was holding my sister's hand. I died on that cold hardwood floor, shattered. But then I woke up. 8 months earlier. This time, I'm not the victim. I'm the executioner. Death doesn't come with a flash of light. It comes with the suffocating scent of Chanel No. 5 and the sound of breaking glass. In my first life, my ending was pathetic. It was a rainy Tuesday night in our upscale Georgetown townhouse. I had come home early from my marketing firm, carrying a bottle of Dom Perignon to celebrate our 3rd anniversary. Instead of a romantic surprise, I walked into our master bedroom to find my husband, Liam Prescott, tangled in our Egyptian cotton sheets with a blonde woman. When she turned her head, the champagne bottle slipped from my fingers, shattering against the oak floor. It was Chloe, my sweet, fragile, 22-year-old younger sister. The sister I had practically raised after our parents passed away in a car crash. I remember the screaming. I remember the absolute absence of guilt in Liam's eyes. He didn't even scramble to cover himself. He just looked annoyed, as if I had interrupted a business meeting. "You're suffocating me, Clara," he had spat, hastily pulling on his slacks while Chloe cowered behind the pillows, playing the victim. "You're always working. Always so rigid." Chloe makes me feel alive. She actually needs me. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I ran for the stairs. Liam chased after me, grabbing my arm at the top of the landing. "Don't you dare make a scene, Clara. We need to talk about the house and the assets." I yanked my arm away. I don't know if he pushed me or if my heel caught on the Persian runner, but I fell. The tumble was a violent blur of pain, snapping bone, and crushing impact. I landed at the bottom of the staircase, my neck bent at an unnatural angle. As my vision faded to a pinpoint, I saw them standing at the top of the stairs. Liam wasn't calling 911. He was wrapping his arm around Chloe's waist, looking down at my broken body with a terrifying, calculated coldness. Then, everything went black. I inhaled sharply, my lungs expanding so violently my ribs ached. My eyes snapped open. I was in bed. The morning sun was streaming through the heavy velvet curtains, casting a warm golden glow across the room. There was no blood, no broken neck, no shattered champagne bottle. Trembling, I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up. October 14th. I dropped the phone as if it burned me. October 14th. This was exactly 8 months before my death. The day before Liam officially launched his tech startup, Synapse Solutions, a company funded entirely by draining my grandfather's trust fund behind my back. I scrambled out of bed and ran to the master bathroom. I gripped the edges of the marble vanity and stared into the mirror. My face was flushed, my breathing ragged. But I was whole. I wasn't dead. I had been dragged back through time, placed right back onto the chessboard before the king and the pawn could corner me. The bathroom door creaked open, and Liam walked in. Sleep-tousled and devastatingly handsome in that boyish, negligent way that had completely fooled me for 5 years. "Morning, babe," he mumbled, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind and resting his chin on my shoulder. "You're up early. Big day tomorrow. I'm going to need you to transfer that last 50 grand from the joint account to Synapse by noon, okay?" A wave of nausea so intense it nearly buckled my knees washed over me. His touch felt like crawling spiders, but a strange, icy calm abruptly descended over my mind. The old Clara would have smiled, kissed his cheek, and willingly handed over her inheritance to support her husband's dreams. The reborn Clara saw him for exactly what he was, a parasite. "Of course, darling," I lied, my voice steady, though my reflection in the mirror looked unrecognizable. The softness in my eyes was gone, replaced by something hollow and sharp. "Whatever you need." He kissed my neck, completely oblivious to the venom coursing through my veins, and stepped into the shower. I walked back into the bedroom, picked up my phone, and opened my messages. There it was. A text from Chloe, sent at 2 a.m. "Chloe, missed you tonight. So proud of you for tomorrow. Love you." She hadn't sent it to me. She had sent it to Liam. In my previous life, I had seen it pop up on his lock screen and thought nothing of it, assuming she was just being a supportive sister-in-law. Now, the context was glaringly, disgustingly obvious. I didn't cry. Tears were a luxury for the weak, and I had already bled out on a hardwood floor for these people. I calmly deleted the message so Liam wouldn't know I'd seen it, got dressed in a sharp crimson street, John's suit, and left the house before he finished his shower. I had exactly 8 months to destroy them, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. My first stop wasn't the office. It was a nondescript brick building in downtown Washington, the office of David Caldwell, an estate lawyer who had been my grandfather's most trusted confidant. "Clara," David said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as I sat across from his massive mahogany desk. "This is highly unusual. Restructuring the blind trust completely, moving the liquid assets into a secure shell corporation. You do realize this means your husband will have absolutely zero access to these funds?" "That is precisely the point, David," I said, crossing my legs. "And I need it done quietly. If Liam's name is on any paperwork requesting a withdrawal, I want it flagged and denied. Tell him there is a temporary freeze due to an IRS audit on my late grandfather's estate." David looked at me for a long moment. He was a sharp man, and he could read the temperature in the room. He simply nodded. "Consider it done. The paperwork will be filed by the end of the hour." By noon, the $50,000 Liam needed for his precious startup launch was locked away. When he called me, frantic and screaming about the bank error, I played the perfect distressed wife. "I don't understand, Liam. David said it's an audit. There's nothing I can do until they clear it." "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You'll just have to ask the bank for a bridge loan." I could hear him hyperventilating on the other end of the line. "A loan? Clara, my credit is maxed. The launch is tomorrow." "I know, honey." "I'm devastated," I cooed, staring out my office window at the Potomac River, a genuine smile playing on my lips. "I have to run into a meeting. Love you." I hung up, feeling the first hit of adrenaline. It was intoxicating. Later that week, Liam, desperate and sweating, managed to secure a high-interest loan to keep Synapse afloat. He was miserable, stressed, and snapping at everyone. I played the supportive angel, brewing him chamomile tea while quietly hiring Mike Vargas, a private investigator with a reputation for being ruthless and discreet. I paid Vargas a hefty retainer in cash. His only job was to shadow Liam and Chloe 24 hours a day. 2 weeks later, the annual Arlington Charity Gala arrived. In my past life, this was the night I stayed home with a migraine while Liam took Chloe as his +1, claiming she needed to get out of the house. That was the night they first slept together in a hotel room downtown. Not this time. I stepped out of the black town car wearing a backless, emerald green silk gown that clung to my curves like water. I had spent 3 hours at the salon. My hair, usually pulled into a severe bun, fell in loose, dark waves down my back. Liam, wearing his rented tuxedo, stared at me with his mouth slightly open. You look different," he muttered, seemingly unnerved by the way the photographers flashed their cameras as I stepped onto the red carpet. "I feel different," I replied, hooking my arm through his with an iron grip. "Let's go network, darling. You need investors, don't you?" Inside the ballroom, the air was thick with expensive perfume and the clinking of crystal flutes. Liam immediately began scanning the room, his eyes darting around like a starved hyena. He was looking for one man, Nathaniel Reed. Nathaniel was a venture capitalist, a self-made billionaire notorious for his ruthless business acumen and his absolute refusal to invest in anything he didn't personally believe in. He was also, objectively, the most intimidating man in Washington. Tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing slate-gray eyes and a jawline that looked like it could cut glass. "There he is," Liam hissed, his grip tightening on my arm. "Clara, stay here. Don't embarrass me. I need to pitch him." I watched Liam scurry across the room, desperate and pathetic. He practically threw himself in front of Nathaniel, talking a mile a minute. Nathaniel held a glass of bourbon, looking at Liam with the bored expression of a lion watching a particularly annoying gnat. I turned away, feeling suffocated by the heat of the room, and slipped out onto the sprawling stone terrace. The cool night air was a relief. I leaned against the stone balustrade, closing my eyes, letting the mask slip for just a moment. I was so tired. The constant vigilance, the acting, the hatred burning in my chest, it was exhausting. "You look like a woman plotting a murder." My eyes flew open. I turned to see Nathaniel Reed stepping out of the shadows, lighting a cigarette. The flame illuminated his sharp features. I straightened my posture, instantly raising my defenses. "And you look like a man hiding from a terrible sales pitch." A low, rich chuckle rumbled in his chest. He walked toward me, leaning against the balustrade a few feet away. "Your husband is very enthusiastic." "Liam is desperate," I corrected, looking out over the manicured gardens. "There's a difference." Nathaniel turned his head to look at me, his gray eyes narrowing slightly. He didn't look at my dress or my body. He looked right into my eyes, as if he could see the gears turning in my head. "Most wives would defend their husband's honor. You just threw him to the wolves." "He threw himself," I replied smoothly. "I'm merely observing the carnage." "You're Clara Dempsey," he stated. Not a question. "The brains behind Dempsey Marketing. I read the piece Forbes did on you last year. You're brilliant. So why are you letting a man who barely understands basic algorithms use your name to peddle a sinking ship?" My breath hitched. He saw right through the facade. Before I could formulate a response, the terrace doors swung open. "Clara! There you are!" Liam barked, storming out onto the patio. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw who I was standing with. His face went pale, then flushed crimson. "Mr. Reed, I didn't realize you were out here with my wife." Liam stepped forward, aggressively wrapping his arm around my waist, pulling me tight against his side. It was a blatant, primitive display of ownership. It was the first time in weeks he had willingly touched me in public. Nathaniel didn't flinch. He took a slow drag from his cigarette, exhaling the smoke into the cool air. His eyes shifted from Liam's panicked face to mine. There was a dangerous, silent communication in his gaze. "We were just discussing business, Prescott," Nathaniel said, his voice smooth as velvet but heavy with a subtle threat. "Your wife is a fascinating woman. You're a very lucky man." Yes, I am," Liam stammered, pulling me toward the doors. "We should get back inside, Clara," Chloe just texted. "She's downstairs at the bar and needs help finding us." At the mention of Chloe's name, a dark satisfaction settled over me. I glanced back over my shoulder at Nathaniel as Liam dragged me inside. Nathaniel raised his glass of bourbon to me in a silent toast, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. The game was changing. The next morning, I sat in my home office, sipping black coffee. My phone buzzed. It was an encrypted email from Mike Vargas. I clicked it open. There were dozens of high-resolution photographs. Liam and Chloe sitting in his car in a dark parking lot. Chloe's hands tangled in his hair. Liam kissing her neck. Time stamped exactly 3 hours after the gala ended, while I was supposedly asleep in our bed. I zoomed in on Liam's face. He looked so smug, so comfortable in his lies. I closed the laptop, a chilling smile spreading across my face. Let them have their secret romance. Let them think they were clever. They had no idea the snare was already wrapped tight around their throats. I just needed to wait for the perfect moment to pull the rope. And with Nathaniel Reed unexpectedly entering the picture, I had a feeling Liam's descent into madness was going to be far more entertaining than I had originally planned. Tension became the new wallpaper in our Georgetown townhouse. It clung to the air, thick and suffocating. Liam was drowning, and the sheer pleasure of watching him gasp for air was a drug I took daily. His high-interest bridge loan, secured from a shadow firm called Apex Holdings, was bleeding him dry. What Liam didn't know, and would never know until it was too late, was that David Caldwell had set up Apex Holdings for me. I had used my personal corporate accounts, separate from the frozen trust, to quietly purchase my husband's debt. I owned his company. I owned his panic. Where is the secondary marketing budget? Liam snapped one Tuesday morning, slamming his coffee mug onto the granite island. Brown liquid sloshed over the rim, staining the white stone. He looked terrible. His usually perfectly styled hair was greasy, and dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. He smelled of stale espresso, nervous sweat, and cheap peppermint gum. I told you, Liam, the accounts are still frozen pending the estate audit, I replied evenly, not looking up from my iPad. I took a slow sip of my matcha latte. Perhaps you should ask your development team to take a temporary pay cut. Or, better yet, ask your sister-in-law. I hear she just bought a rather expensive Cartier love bracelet. Liam went rigidly still. The silence in the kitchen stretched, pulled taut like a piano wire. What are you talking about? He managed, his voice dropping an octave. I looked up, meeting his panicked gaze with mild, calculated innocence. Chloe's Instagram. She posted a photo from a hotel downtown yesterday, showing off a new gold bracelet. It looked like Cartier. I'm just saying, if she has that kind of disposable income on a barista's salary, maybe she can invest in Synapse. A muscle in his jaw feathered. He knew I had seen the bracelet. He also knew he was the one who had bought it for her, using the last of his company's operational funds to keep his mistress happy while he ignored his wife. I have to go to the office, he muttered, grabbing his briefcase and practically bolting for the garage door. Don't forget, I called out, my voice sickly sweet. Dinner tonight at the Capitol Grill, 8 o'clock. We're meeting Nathaniel Reed. Liam froze, his hand on the doorknob. He turned back, his eyes wide, a frantic mixture of hope and deep-seated insecurity flashing across his features. Reed? He agreed to a meeting? How? I asked him, I said simply, returning my attention to the screen. See you at 8, darling. That evening, I arrived at the Capitol Grill in downtown D.C. 15 minutes early. I wore a tailored charcoal gray Tom Ford suit that screamed power, my hair pulled back into a sleek, unforgiving ponytail. Nathaniel was already at the corner booth, nursing a glass of Macallan 18. Clara, he said, standing as I approached. His slate gray eyes swept over me, a silent hum of approval radiating from his imposing frame. You're punctual, a rare trait in this city. Time is the only asset we can't buy back, Nathaniel, I replied, sliding into the leather booth across from him. Thank you for coming. I came because you intrigued me at the gala, he said, leaning forward, resting his forearms on the mahogany table. You have a reputation for turning dying brands into empires. Yet, you're letting your husband pilot a tech startup that is fundamentally flawed in its core algorithm. Why? He was sharp, painfully sharp. Synapse Solutions is Liam's passion project, I said smoothly, picking up the menu. I am merely the supportive wife. Nathaniel scoffed, a low, rumbling sound. Don't insult my intelligence, Clara. You look at him the way a butcher looks at a lamb. What is the end game? Before I could answer, the matron approached, leading a flushed, out-of-breath Liam to our table. He had clearly run from the metro station. His suit jacket was wrinkled, and he looked incredibly out of place next to Nathaniel's effortless, bespoke authority. Mr. Reed, Liam practically panted, shoving his hand forward. Thank you for this opportunity. I brought the revised pitch deck. Sit down, Prescott, Nathaniel interrupted, not shaking his hand. He took a slow sip of his scotch. This isn't a pitch meeting. This is a dinner. Your wife invited me to discuss her marketing firm's upcoming expansion. Liam's face dropped. He looked at me, betrayal and pure, unadulterated jealousy warring in his eyes. He hated that I had access to this man. He hated that Nathaniel was looking at me with respect, while looking at him like a pest. Throughout dinner, the dynamic was agonizing for Liam. Nathaniel directed every business question, every strategic inquiry, entirely to me. When Liam tried to interject with buzzwords about Synapse's disruptive cloud architecture, Nathaniel would simply blink, wait for a beat of suffocating silence, and then ask me another question about consumer psychology. By the time the check arrived, Liam was vibrating with a toxic mix of rage and humiliation. He practically dragged me out to the sidewalk under the warm glow of the street lamps. "What the hell was that, Clara?" he hissed, grabbing my upper arm tightly. "You embarrassed me. You set me up to look like an idiot in front of the biggest VC in the city." I looked down at his hand gripping my jacket, then back up to his eyes. My expression was pure ice. "Let go of my arm, Liam." He didn't. His grip tightened. "You're my wife. You're supposed to help me. But lately, you're acting like you don't even care if Synapse goes under. And why is he looking at you like that? Are you sleeping with him?" The sheer audacity of the accusation almost made me laugh. He was projecting his own filthy guilt onto me. "If Synapse goes under, Liam, it will be because you lack the competence to run it," I said, my voice dangerously low. I stepped into his space, forcing him to look down at me. And as for Nathaniel Reed, he looks at me with respect because I earn it.
"Something you wouldn't understand. Now, take your hand off me or I will break your fingers."
He snatched his hand back as if I had burned him, his eyes wide with a sudden dawning terror. He was finally realizing that the docile ATM wife he thought he married was dead. I turned and walked toward my waiting Uber, leaving him standing on the pavement, completely unraveling. Friday night was the official launch party for Synapse Solutions. Liam had rented out a chic, industrial loft space in Dupont Circle, blowing the absolute last of his loan money on an open bar, pretentious catered hors d'oeuvres, and a massive LED screen for his presentation. The room was packed with mid-level tech developers, a few minor local politicians, and my marketing contacts, whom I had personally invited to witness the slaughter. I stood near the back of the room, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching the scene unfold. Liam was at the front, sweating through his custom shirt, adjusting his microphone headset. He looked manic. He needed this launch to generate immediate pre-orders, or Apex Holdings, meaning me, would foreclose on his company by Monday. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted Chloe. She was lingering near the catering table, wearing a completely inappropriate, plunging red cocktail dress. She kept shooting Liam encouraging, secretive little smiles, playing the devoted muse in the shadows. It was time to bring her into the light. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message to Mike Vargas, my private investigator, who was currently sitting in a black SUV parked in the alleyway behind the building, patched into the loft's Wi-Fi network. "Execute." Liam tapped the microphone. The low hum of feedback silenced the room. "Thank you all for coming," Liam started, his voice shaking slightly before he forced a wide, charismatic smile. "Tonight, we change the landscape of data integration. Synapse Solutions isn't just software. It's a revolution in how we connect." He clicked the remote in his hand. "Let me show you the future." The massive LED screen behind him flashed black. But instead of the sleek blue and white Synapse logo appearing, the screen flickered, and a high-resolution photograph materialized, 10 feet tall. It was Liam and Chloe, in his car. Her hands were tangled in his hair, her mouth pressed against his neck. The timestamp in the corner glowed neon green. October 28th, 2:15 a.m. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. The music abruptly cut off. Liam froze, staring out at the shocked faces of his investors and peers. He slowly turned around. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He furiously clicked the remote, his thumb jamming the button. "Turn it off!" Someone turned the feed off. The slide advanced. It was a screenshot of a text thread between them. Liam. "Clara is so clueless. The trust is frozen, but I'll get her to sign a personal guarantee for the loan. Just wait for me at the hotel." Chloe. "I hate that you have to go home to her. I love you." Chloe. A sharp, horrified voice rang out from the front row. It was my aunt who had flown in from Boston for the event. She stared at my sister, appalled. Chloe dropped her champagne flute. It shattered against the concrete floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the dead silence. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing instantly, looking for somewhere to hide. I walked slowly down the center aisle. The crowd parted for me instinctively. The only sound was the sharp, rhythmic click of my Christian Louboutin heels against the polished concrete. I stopped at the front, looking up at my husband. He was hyperventilating, his eyes darting frantically between me, the screen, and the exit. "Clara," he choked out, dropping the remote. It clattered to the stage. "Clara, please, it's a hack. Someone hacked the presentation. It's fake." "Don't insult me, Liam," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "I paid a very expensive investigator to take those photos. You've been sleeping with my sister for months." "He manipulated me!" Chloe shrieked from the side of the room, suddenly turning on him in a desperate bid for survival. "Clara, I swear! He told me you two were getting a divorce. He said you didn't love him." Liam whipped his head toward her, sheer disbelief morphing into rage. "You little liar! You begged me to leave her!" "Enough!" I commanded. The words snapped like a whip, and they both fell silent. I looked at Liam, feeling nothing but a cold, heavy satisfaction. "The affair is pathetic, Liam, but it isn't the reason you are finished." I reached into my designer clutch and pulled out a folded legal document, tossing it onto the stage at his feet. "I didn't just freeze my grandfather's trust," I explained, projecting my voice for the room. "I set up Apex Holdings. I am your sole creditor, Liam. And since you violated the moral turpitude clause hidden in page 42 of your bridge loan agreement, the loan is in default, effective immediately." Liam stared at the paper as if it were a venomous snake. His knees physically buckled. He dropped to the stage, his hands gripping his hair, a guttural sound of pure despair ripping from his throat. No, you can't. "Clara, I built this. You can't take it." "I already have," I said, turning my back on him. I looked toward the exit. Nathaniel Reed was standing near the heavy iron doors, leaning against the brick wall, a slow, appreciative smile spreading across his face. I walked toward him, leaving my ruined husband and my treacherous sister sobbing in the wreckage of their own making. The air tasted sweet. I had died a victim on a hardwood floor, but I was walking out of this loft a queen, and I was never looking back. Are you obsessed with this revenge story? Don't let the drama stop here. Hit that like button if you think Clara gave Liam exactly what he deserved. Share this with a friend who loves a satisfying plot twist, and subscribe to the channel for more intense, real-life Reborn drama stories uploaded every week. Drop a comment below. What would you have done to Liam?